All right, back with another episode of how we turn this old busted up John boat into an elite fishing rig. If you haven't been following this series, really quickly, we had this brand new aluminum transom and we replaced that old rotted treated plywood transom. It's gone forever, and now we have a nice new one after fixing all the holes in it. And then we have this kit. If you look underneath, our TB Nation store actually has this kit right there. You can view it right underneath the video and click on it, but this is what we put this entire boat together with. Framing it was a breeze. It was the easiest job we've ever done. We put a lot of time into this kit from everybody, from the audience feedback and customer feedback, and we finally stuck something together that's pretty cost effective and easy to put together. It's not going to take you a million months or break your wallet. Except for this, I had to make that custom. I had no good solution for a console than just to make one. But we're going to produce and sell consoles too. Now, as far as all the throttle and the steering cables and all that nonsense, we're going to do that right now. We're going to mount a motor, 25 horse on there, and rig it all up and show you exactly what we used and how we did it. And we're going to go over the most common mistakes that I ran into so that you also do not do them. We'll talk about the differences and the advantages between rotary steering and hydraulic steering, and also how to rig your console the most effective for your setup. And also this whole side column, something you need to do well into the framing process before you even get so far into rigging this. Stay tuned. Just FYI, we have a scratch and dent sale going on right now. That's legit. Trying to get rid of all the oddball items we have left over, and auto boat systems have arrived. I know you guys have been waiting, but they are here and they will be getting shipped out very soon. We're also giving $30 off all orders over a certain threshold. Now onto the kit we're using. Just FYI, we're using this kit, the 1648 John Boat Weekend Warrior kits. Will later be refined to like a Bass Tracker revamp kit, but right now this kit is what I use to put this whole boat together. We're going to rig this 25 horsepower Gen 3 Mercury outboard up, but for the first time ever, it's going to be a console motor and not a tiller. We've ran tiller light builds forever, and people have just requested more. To do this, we're going to be using a standard rotary steering kit and showing you how to install the entire thing. You could use hydraulic, but hydraulic is super overkill for an outboard this small. It's just not worth it. Just go ahead and get this. It's the easiest to install by far. And then we're going to be using a throttle control, and that's the main umbilical that allows the throttle control to communicate to the engine. But without shifter cables, this only stops and starts the motor. So we will be having to get throttle shifter cables, and not just any specifically ones for this model. These are Gen 1. They will work on the Gen 1 Mercury OEM box or this knockoff one we showed you in the picture. They will need to be 10 foot in length. Do not get 12 foot. You will regret it. Also get a 10 foot long steering column. That will be the best fit for your boat. And all these things can be found on my Amazon store. I'll leave the links in the description and comment section below. This is the rotary steering column. It just feeds a cable back and forth on a gear, and that's what makes it a rotary steering. Super simple. The actual end of the cable goes right in here like so. Note that if you have a jack plate that's really far off, this is going to be pretty hard to run because the cable wants to stick out sideways. So that might be another reason to get hydraulic steering, but for now we're not doing that. And we also have a Mercury OEM control box. Slightly different from the knockoff one I put in the link below, but they are the same thing. Just a real quick example, it looks like it's all one solid body, but that side is actually a part that comes off, and then you expose the grommet that holds all the wires and the cables and all that nonsense right into the outboard. The umbilical plug-in is very obvious. Now we're ready to connect the shifter cables to the throttle shift control box. So they're pretty standard. No matter what you get, Yamaha, Mercury, they are going to have something like this where you take off a bottom plate and there will be two levers in there that you'll connect the cables to. So it doesn't really matter how you connect the cables initially, but just know that the lever that moves first, that is the shifter cable lever, and the one that moves last, that is the throttle cable. So after you've connected them here, just label them with a piece of tape and a marker. That way you know when you have to run these cables back to the engine through the grommet, which ones go where. It will also have 3 major bolt points that run all the way through the body, and you even have a spacer like this to give you a little bit of clearance if that's right on the side of a wall, so you can move the throttle shifter up and down without banging your hand. So on each end of the shifter cable, you're going to have that little round block that is adjustable, and that mounts right into these little half moon holes, and that's what gives the throttle cable tension to pull the cable and shift it back and forth without the entire cable moving. This is in the engine and also in the throttle control. Make sure after you've attached these that you shift your throttle cable back and forth to make sure you have a true neutral standpoint. Otherwise, you're going to have serious problems start your motor later and could cause damage. There's 2 small carter pins to secure these shifter cables to the designated spots. The grommets lead the cables right to said spots. They are unmissable. It should look something like this. Adjust those little round pegs as needed, like so, to make sure you get a true neutral standpoint by spinning the propeller freely. Then go ahead and secure that block back on. If you're going to be running gauges, there'll be so many more wires through that grommet, and there's also a different connection on the throttle control designated for all those things. But I don't know why you'd even do that when you could just get a modern fish finder that tells you the speed of your boat and everything you would need to know anyways, besides the gas tank level. So this is actually really on in the build before we even framed this boat, but I felt it had to be done before we got too far into the framing that I wouldn't really know where stuff was supposed to go. I found out that I had a 12-foot steering cable and could only get 12-foot shifter cables immediately, and found out that 12 feet was way too long. That caused me a lot of problems. I ended up getting 10-foot shifter cables anyways, and I just made that 12-foot steering column work, but it was pain. Just get 10-foot everything. Help yourself out. Hey guys, did you know it's a felony to watch a YouTube video 5 minutes in and still not give that video a like or a comment? You don't want to be that person, do you? Go ahead and like this video if you think it's useful. So I didn't have a console for this boat, which is unlikely. If you're going to get a bass boat restoration project like this, it'll probably have a console. Keep it, because making one is a pain. We did it, and it was not the prettiest thing. Kind of ugly, but a grinder and paint will make you the welder you ain't, so it came out alright. FYI, a console just like this will be available to the public for kits like this made by somebody who can actually weld. Now for that rotary steering unit. It just takes the cable on the other end, and you just run it through, and there'll be a point where it stops, and you just have to cycle it through with your hand, like so. And once it's in there, then you just tighten the bolts around it to secure that whole cable into the rotary, and then you got to find your mounting hole where you want to put it on the console. And the more that I work on this, not only did I get too long of lines for everything, but I noticed I have no place to put those lines even if they're the correct length. So I got to make that. And I remember briefly restoring a bass tracker for some guy way back in the day that he had a side column on the right side leading just like this. So we're going to replicate that. Had I had the intuition like earlier in the build, I would have made something specifically for it. That way it wouldn't be this difficult. Like I could have just made a column before the end of the wall on the right leading all the way to the end. That would have just channeled all the cables internally. It would have looked really clean. But this is also okay too. You're just going to have to make a little column. It could be square, it could be rectangular. It just has to be long and wide enough to house all the cables running through it. So if you're going to be running any other additional wiring, it's a pretty good conduit to run all the wiring. You can just do this out of angle in the kit, or you can bend sheet metal. You can do both. I did both. And it has that funky little offset up there in the front, because right there you'll see an offset on the wall panel, and that is to hide the extra long cable I got for the steering that made me have to do that. So if you get the right length steering cable, you won't have to do that. I wanted this conduit to be serviceable, so I just drilled a bunch of 1/8 inch holes and got a bunch of stainless hardware and loosely put it in there. And so if we ever have to get in here to replace something, we can. One thing left to rig before we actually try to start this thing, the steering console. Quite easy, it's plug and play. There's a half moon pin that sits right in the top of the steering column where that steering wheel goes onto, and once you tighten that bolt against that half moon pin, that wheel will not come off. You will have to use brute force to remove it. So now, the only thing we have left to do is try starting it. Later on, Richard and I determined that this was not starting because the fuel pump went bad. The fuel pump. And it's because I left old gas in there and it messed up the fuel pump. So I had to order that. Waited for a week for that. Now I gotta wait for Richard to not be busy to help me fix it. I might just figure it out myself, but I've been historically bad with motors. Maybe I can do it now. We'll see. We'll see. I can't wait for him forever. He's either got to show or I got to do it. Well, let's just show you what we did. We got this, and that's feeding fuel. That's just a fuel water separator running ethanol-free gas through here. I gotta fix. I'll probably get a new line. That was like all the line I had left, but really that's just a kink there. It's not gonna be great over time. One thing I didn't show you is the steering linkage from here. So it's going to be different on every motor, the style, but it'll essentially be the same type of bar. Connects here, mounts there. When you turn that, it'll steer back and forth. One thing I didn't show you that we ran through the grommet was like the starter cables. So the starter cables are ran through an additional conduit down there. We're going to get to those conduits and everything else. Obviously, steering cables, these are 10 foot. Steering cables and the steering column are all ran through one of our TV Nation cable wraps. We have cable wraps now, and also for the trolling motor, we have cable wraps. Nobody else's logo looks that good, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Be honest with yourself. These are trimmable too. This was actually too long, and I trimmed it right where it started going into the port. This is that whole column. We turfed it, There's like the screws, just in case you need to service it. The most complicated part, this set me back a few days. I was actually really upset that I didn't pre-plan for that. I get kind of arrogant, and I think I could just wing everything. So yeah, there's at least 1 or 2 or 3 times, sometimes more, in a build where I really have to like rethink my life. So here we got, cool thing though are these bilge brackets. They make everything here tremendously better. And obviously we have a pretty good example of the flow ride hose and then the standard braided hose. So if you get the starter kit like we did, and you just go source your own hose from a hardware store, even if it's braided, it'll kink. But you know it doesn't kink? This stuff. So we'll probably end up replacing that stupid thing just because it's not gonna do well over time. Everything here is pretty razor thin. Like it's all quite, everything is like 1 hair away from touching each other. That's just how tight everything is. But in here we'll have a Noco Genius 4-bank charger. And we only need 3 out of the 4 banks, but this one will charge anything from lead acid to lithium. We got the leads going through here. I got to redo all those leads because I had these crappy little things. Yeah, and once I size those leads appropriately, they'll be going to all the batteries. But the starter battery, but we also have the starter cables running through that pipe conduit right there, going into the main box here, going into the main box here. And that one is right there. We'll also be putting rubber matting or turf on here just for an extra safety measure so these terminals don't ever hit this. This is all pretty risky move to put the seats in here. The easier thing would have been to just forego the seats, bring the deck all the way up here, sit on the deck. If your butt's sore from just sitting on the turf, then like get a throw pad and sit on it. That would have been the more conservative and simple way to do this, and then you wouldn't have this space issue I have with the batteries where I got to do other things like make a whole new hatch that's elevated from all the other hatches to be able to handle that. Like, there's some things I cause myself problems. It'll look really good at the end, but really, unless you just really need seats, which I will say they were very comfortable, and I'll be glad that I did this in the end, but it was a lot of work. And if you're trying to get this boat can truly be built in a week, even with these complications. But if you need it built faster, I would just build a straight flat deck. There is enough aluminum inside the kit to do it, and just drop it right here. And really the distance you need between the console and say your deck is what do we got here? 15 inches. 15, 16 inches. I would go 16. Just be safe, do 16. All right, and I'm a 6 foot tall person, and this is actually really comfortable. And I like obviously you got all that crap going on. But the space in the console, my foot was able to be in here, able to stretch my feet out. And you know, it was nice. I actually like this a lot. There's these super minimalistic consoles that you find on Amazon that are really dirt ugly. I was actually gonna get one of those. I'm so glad I didn't. So glad I just remade this. I actually like this a lot. Again, we're gonna get these produced. We're gonna have a Bass Tracker revamp kit. This is a 1648 jumbo kit we put this together with. You can get that kit now and follow me, and that kit will build this boat. But specifically, we're gonna make a Bass Tracker revamp kit with bottom conduits like that one there. Obviously having the console, and we'll probably end up making this little custom steering column. We'll think about a good way to do it. And so things that were really hard to make custom that we had to weld together, we'll just have those in the kit, and you can get around that. And this whole thing otherwise can be put together with simple tools and a smart brain. So as you see, this boat's already complete. There's not a whole lot left for us to do. So the next video coming up in particular is going to be all about reserve flotation, where to put it, why it's needed, and what to use. And specifically, it's pour foam, if you want to worry about. I think there's some things we have to address about pour foam, just things you got to worry about. I know there's people advocating out there that hate it. They say it's a swear word. Some people are saying that it should be illegal, but really, it's not that. It's pour foam doesn't ruin boats. Poor design with foam in boats ruins boats. So we're going to be talking about how to not have a poor design and pour this stuff in so you have the safest boat. After that, it's just rigging. Very simple rigging, and then hopefully by then the boat will be done and we can just demo it, because this thing is ready. It just need to finish the motor. Stupid motor. It's always the motor. It is.